Welcome to the Brave Feminine Leadership podcast and our CEO series, where I get to dig into delicious conversations with global leaders, and we get to soak up their wisdom and perspective on all things life and leadership. And I'm absolutely thrilled today to welcome Lisa Harrison to the conversation. Lisa, so lovely to have you join me.
Having me. I'm so looking forward to having a chat today.
Brilliant. So let me just share for the audience who haven't come across you before, let me just share a little bit about your bio briefly, and then we'll get into the conversation. So Lisa Harrison's the CEO of Suncorp Consumer Insurance and has got over 25 years experience in financial services with 20 years at Suncorp. She specialises in strategic partnerships, digital transformation and customer excellence, driving impactful change in the industry. Lisa is a passionate advocate, I have trouble spitting that out, for diversity and inclusion. Lisa champions workplace progress through her leadership and advisory roles. And Lisa, I had the pleasure of meeting you earlier this year. We were together at a World Vision lunch, might come up during our chat. And between us was the wonderful Ali Smith, who plays netball for the New South Wales Swifts. And I know that Suncorp's been a long-term supporter, but lovely to have met two incredible female leaders on that day. Let's get going into our conversation. And the first question, or the first really thing I want to hear is, can you help the audience understand me? Who are you as a human being?
Yeah, well, firstly, it was fantastic to meet at that lunch. We were in the room with some incredible women and sharing the story that many of us experienced going to Zambia earlier this year. I'm sure we probably might touch on that later in the conversation. But who am I as a human being? A couple of things. One is I'm a mother. So I've got two children. They're teenage girls, and that's something that brings me joy. Also, I'm a mother of a dog. I love, he brings me lots of joy. And I'm a wife. Been married to Craig for over 20 years. And to me, family is really important. And equally, what's also important to me is I love my job. I love my work. Purpose is really important. And I've worked in the insurance industry for over 25 years. It's an industry, I think, that does really important work in communities, especially when people are at their most vulnerable. And, that's the thing that I'm incredibly motivated and passionate about. And then also, I genuinely believe that in the world, try to do good as well. And that's why opportunities like going to Zambia with World Vision was a great opportunity for me to see how you can do good in the world. So that's a little bit about me.
Amazing, Lisa. So people are going to be fascinated to understand, your career. I think the question I hear most often that resonates with people is, in the role that you're in today, in the CEO role, how did you get there? I know from us having spoken before that you were kind of intentional about the insurance industry, but take us right back, kind of step through your career and maybe some of the key decisions along the way. It'd be great to hear that.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit more about me. I grew up in the suburbs of Sydney. I was the youngest of four kids, and my parents were both teachers. So my mum and dad both worked, and they were teachers. And for me, one of the key things that I took away from that is, one, the importance of family, but also the importance of learning. And I think if I think about my career, there's a common thematic about embracing learning and continuing to learn to grow is a very, very strong theme. But look, I've probably had a pretty traditional path, went to uni, and then as sort of I was coming out of uni, starting to think about it, applied for a range of sort of graduate programs. And they went from sort of FMCG to sort of consulting. And also I put in a submission to an insurance company. And I've got to say, I probably didn't know a lot about insurance when I put the submission in, but I was pretty fortunate to get an interview, and I was interviewed by a pretty remarkable HR person at the time that just spoke with purpose about what the company did and the impact insurance has in economies, and in communities. And it was something I was like, wow, I want to understand more. At the time, it was a global organisation as well. And so you just really appreciated the positive impact the insurance industry can have across the globe as well. And I was fortunate enough to be offered a position as a graduate at that organisation all those years ago. So, and then from there, I built a passion and a love for what insurance does.
So what do you feel gave you your first break in your career then? Because you're obviously in a pretty senior role, but what were some of those critical moments on the way through? I always ask people, was there some feedback in your career that you needed to hear to maybe make changes? But just tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I think for me, a couple of thematics. One is when you're a graduate, you get asked to go across the entire business. So really fortunate. I went to sales. I went into sort of the more technical components of insurance, went into claims, where obviously you get the fortune of dealing with customers and supporting customers. And also I got to go work in our Singapore office on a variety of different tasks. And then through the years, I've sort of been offered lots of other opportunities to try different things as well. And so a couple of things, one that I've learnt from that is learn to embrace opportunities and new things, even though you might not know everything about them. And then I probably think, though, one of the most pivotal pieces in my career, though, would have been about 12 years ago. And I was always willing to learn, always willing to embrace new opportunities and new challenges. But probably one reflection I had was I probably was never brave enough to put up my hand for those challenges. I was brave enough if someone asked me to say yes. And equally, the other thing I focused on disproportionately was all the things I wasn't good at.
Yes.
And so what was the change? So for me, I got asked to go on this program with about 12 other women. I thought, okay, this is going to be interesting. It was a pilot program that was being done at the organisation. And it was all about how do you build female leaders. And I went into it knowing nothing about the program, a little bit nervous. And I thought, okay, this is just going to be thinking about all my development areas. It's going to be exposing me in terms of all the things I'm not good at. And then there came this moment and they said, okay, we're only going to talk about strengths for the next half a day. And I was like, okay, now I'm feeling more uncomfortable. I thought I was going to feel uncomfortable talking about my development areas. I was like, what? You want me to say what I'm good at?
This is truly horrific.
And, beads of sweat rolling off the forehead. And then it got even more uncomfortable because they said, we got feedback from your boss, your team, team members, peers, and they've given you feedback on only the things you're good at.
Wow.
And that was kind of a bit of a career moment in terms of, one, thinking about your strengths and really learning how do you use those strengths to help you support your team and face into challenges and opportunities. So, I think for me, that was one of the greatest development gifts I've had in my career, even though I felt pretty uncomfortable at the time.
I'm so fascinated to hear, and this might risk making you uncomfortable as I ask it, but is there a piece of feedback that you got through that at the time that has stayed with you? Is there something that made a real impact that you heard someone call out as a strength?
There were a couple of things. One is just the importance of thinking about your strengths, I think, is the overarching piece. But I always knew I loved to learn, and I sort of did that subconsciously. But others saw that in me, and they saw that learning agility, and then they sort of translated it, which is when you're faced with problems or opportunities, you're willing to dive straight into them. And I'd never heard that really articulated. I just sort of went, okay, well, I grew up with parents as teachers. they instilled with me the importance of learning, how to learn, and then a love was born of learning. But then others saw it, and then they were able to translate and say, and we've seen this in action. And so I guess for me, one of the things is probably when you face bigger problems, you learn not to have fear, because you go, actually, well, I probably innately know how to learn and stare into these opportunities. And then importantly, how can I impart that to others to help them learn as well?
Was there a moment where you thought to yourself, I could be CEO one day, or did someone say something that kind of opened that path for you?
Probably not explicitly. What I would say is I think I've always had ambition to play a role in making a difference. And that's how I've always thought about it and articulated it. This is my 20th year at Suncorp, and whilst, between my first job and then I had another job in between, I've been at Suncorp for 20 years now. And for me, I love this organisation. In my time, I've had 2 children while working in this organisation. I think, I'm so connected to the purpose, to the people, and to the customers and the communities that we serve. And so really being motivated to help make sure that we are the absolute best is probably more the driver versus a role.
Absolutely. And so did you, thank you for sharing that pivotal, session that you did before. Did you come out of that willing to put your hand up for opportunities? Like, was that a change for you where you started to get comfortable to talk about your achievements and put your hand up?
Yeah, absolutely. And, for me, either opportunities were in front of me and either people would sort of come and say, do you want to have a chat about them? But at the same time, I would have to say to people, well, actually, I'm eager to take on new challenges. So certainly a bit of both. And the other piece is actually knowing your strengths helps you have those conversations, which is when someone says either, do you want to put up your hand, or you put up your hand, you're clear in terms of the difference you'll make. And I think that's really important to say, if you're ever being asked to do a role or a role's on the table, what difference would you make? And leveraging your strengths to help demonstrate that is part of the conversation.
Do you remember stepping into the CEO role? Like, do you remember anything about the first sort of period of time? A lot of people talk about suddenly everyone's watching them and things like that. Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, so in terms of when I got the opportunity to sort of lead a big function, a couple of things sort of came up. One is, I would say the first 3 months in any role are always the busiest. You are literally drinking from a fire hydrant. You're getting to know the team, if it's an existing team in place. You're getting to know all the team members, and especially if it's a big team, across the organisation. So you want to get a really good feel for the culture and the talent. And then you really want to get an understanding of how a priority's clear, is the strategy right, do we need to make any changes? And people are looking at you to give clarity early on as well. So
Absolutely.
First 3 months are always busy. The other piece of advice I give myself and others, no matter what role it is in the first 3 months, is give yourself that time. Know it's going to be busy. Know you're going to be working super hard, but no clarity will emerge out of the end of the process. And with clarity, you can lead well.
So I wanted to ask you about that because, I think clarity is so important. And I think, often what I see is people try and do too much. There's you would know yourself, you step into a role, and even now I'm sure that you'd look around and see lots of things that you would fix or do differently if you could. How do you get that clarity? What do you actually do to work that out?
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things. One is working in insurance, naturally, I like numbers. And so I think numbers are always important. But equally, in terms of getting clarity, I think it comes down to, one, purpose. And I genuinely think a company's purpose is a really good map for the things you need to do to be successful.
Mm.
And if you use that as sort of part of your map to anchor the organisation, anchor the priorities, you've got a pretty good map. Importantly, it's also about talking to people. So one of the things I love numbers, but I love talking to people. And if you can build up a trusting relationship with people, then you get a pretty good feel of where there's opportunities, where there's challenges, and importantly, what are their ideas in terms of to solve them.
Mm.
And so I think part of that process is talking to a wide range of your own team, other team members, customers, community groups, and also having a pretty trusted network is also helpful to sort of test some of the ideas. But clarity is really important.
And then once you've got that, how do you make sure there's alignment? Because, I think what I see a lot is you can have a perfect strategy, you can have clarity on things, but if your team are not totally aligned and on board about it, you're not actually going to execute anything. So what would be your advice, or what do you do to make sure you've got alignment?
Yeah, well, so I always think that there's clarity, there's alignment, and then you want to seek momentum.
Mm-hmm.
And so alignment is really, really important. So you can only get alignment if people are clear. And so probably to the point of, sometimes to get the clarity, sometimes you have to go over and over it again, which is, okay, is everyone clear what this means? Because if I think it means blue and someone thinks it means red, then everyone can say yes, but we're off building a blue thing and a red thing.
Exactly.
And so I think making sure that you don't shortcut the clarity process is really important to have alignment. Mm. Then you've got to create great conversations and really make sure that people feel heard. But equally, you've got to make a decision. So you've got to be clear in terms of the decision.
Mm.
And sometimes you have to go through a painful process where if people are not aligned, that maybe they're not the right people to execute the strategy. And so sometimes tough conversations follow. But that's really important because in organisations, if people see others aren't aligned, it makes it really hard to drive change. And then importantly, what I do talk about is momentum is really important. So once you've got clarity, once you've got alignment, make sure you've got momentum. And so I think recognising success and having appropriate milestones is really, really important. So make sure people know that they're on track. Be really thoughtful in terms of those success milestones. Don't make them too far out that people go, okay, well, we'll find out in 5 years if we're successful. Make sure you've got them meaningful enough that people don't, they're not too easy. But also, they're a bit time bound, and remember to recognise and celebrate some of the successes on the journey. And one of the things I also noticed, and this was something I took away from my trip to Zambia, there was an incredible leader of that trip. And one of the things she did was when she recognised someone doing something amazing, she took them aside and really said, you did this. This is what I saw, and this is how it made people feel as well. And just it took 2 minutes of the time, but it was just so incredible to watch her just consistently do that. And so I think it's not only just recognising the milestones, but also connecting in terms of what they did. And importantly, what she did so well was how did it make others feel? And you just saw people wanting to grow even more and more through that experience. And so that's probably something I've been practicing a little bit more of this year after seeing that.
How do you fill yourself up with, your big, busy roles, lots to do inside an organisation? How do you find ways to fill yourself up with external inspiration and new ideas and kind of stay at pace with what's going on so you can bring fresh ideas in?
Yeah, so a couple of things. One is, I like to read articles in terms of what's best practice, case studies in terms of what others are doing. I like talking to people and hearing what they're doing, either overseas, locally, in sort of different industries, to understand what they're doing and the approaches that they take. I think there's a lot to learn from just conversations with others. And I think the other thing is just giving yourself time to learn. Time is one of the most precious gifts you can have, and to use it wisely.
I was going to ask you about that. Because I think one of the hardest steps I see for people transitioning into these senior roles is leaving their old job behind. A lot of people move into senior roles and they take the stuff, there's a comfort factor, there's whatever, they take it with them. Did you ever take aspects of your role with you, or have you been disciplined about letting go and creating space?
Look, probably all of the above. There's many things I left, but I'm certainly not perfect. So I think a couple of things. What helps you do that? One, if you've got a great team, the worst thing you can do is take on their job.
Yeah. Empower
them. I think remembering that as a leader, empowerment is a great gift you can give to your team. So certainly, I'm pretty focused on that. I try to seek feedback from my team in terms of whether I'm empowering them to do the job they're supposed to do. And then the other thing is, and you certainly asked in terms of a book that I've learned a lot from, and I think I tend to find lots of snippets from different books to take away, but I do like that matrix around what's important versus urgent.
Yes, that's my favourite, the Eisenhower.
Yeah, and I reflect on that a lot of times just to make sure that I'm spending my time wisely and in turn giving good direction to my team. Because often there can be so many things thrown at you and you just sometimes need to take a step back and go, okay, well, what's important, what's urgent, and am I allocating the right amount of time to doing that?
This is like music in terms of listening to you do that. That's absolutely amazing. So, fantastic. If you had to reflect back and you thought someone new is stepping into a role like yours, how would you summarise, and we've covered a lot of ground already, so I might be making it difficult for you, but what would you say would be the 2 or 3 things that you think everyone should consider as they take that step into a CEO role?
Well, I think a couple of things. One is the role's not about you, it's about your people. And so it's so important once you become a leader of people to really invest in your leadership. So the greatest assets are the people in the organisation, and how are you engaging and empowering them? How are you giving them clarity, making sure it's an environment where everyone's aligned and you're really focusing on empowering them to deliver great experiences for customers. And so, I think, are you spending enough time thinking about them and supporting them is something that's really important when you step into these roles. I think the other thing is symbols as a leader is really important. So that could be, I work in an open plan office. That's really important because I want to be accessible to the team. And also, I spend a lot of time with our customers because we're a business that supports our customers, and I want to listen and learn from them.
Who have been your greatest mentors throughout your career?
I've had so many people that have given me inspiration, lessons in my career. couple of things. One is, I go back, my mum was a working mother, 4 kids, and I took a lot of inspiration from my mum in terms of career and the purpose that delivered for her. And that's certainly an instilled memory for me as a child. I think probably my mum also taught me that not everything has to be perfect.
Yeah,
just choose the things that do need to be done well. And so, I remember as a kid, I broke one of my mum's, great plates. And, you only, in our house, we had this dining setting that only came out in special occasions.
The good set, yeah.
The good set. And I remember I was absolutely petrified because I was packing it away and I dropped it. And my mum just said, well, and I thought I was going to be sent to my room for the next week. I was just so petrified. And she goes, well, there's nothing we can do about it now. Just move on. It's a plate. And, for me, just this, calm in a crisis, just move on and deal with it. And not everything can be perfect is something I took away from my mum. And I think that's been a fantastic lesson. At the same time, I've had, really remarkable leaders in terms of just instilling the importance of looking after your people. If you want to look after your customers, look after your people. And there have been people I've worked for at Suncorp that have really taught me the importance of that early in my career. And I think that's definitely helped me be a better leader and deliver better outcomes for everyone.
Favourite part of your role?
I think favourite part of my role is meeting our customers. So, it's a huge responsibility to help look after our customers and help them protect what could be their largest asset, which is often their home or their car, which is, for me, the opportunity sometimes to earn an income, to take kids to school. And so, it's a huge responsibility and it's an absolute privilege that they trust us to do that. So getting to meet our customers and listen to them. The other thing, I think is fantastic is when we've helped them rebuild their car or rebuild their home, to see the impact that's made. And so by far and away, I think that's the favourite part of the role.
I mean, that really brings to life what you do it for, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. How lovely to have that deep connection, Lisa, to what it is you do. Lisa, one of the things that when you and I first met, one of the things I heard you say a lot was you were lucky. I was lucky to get this opportunity and I was lucky to get that opportunity. And I just wanted to, kind of pick your brain on that and interrogate that a little bit. I mean, sure, there's some luck involved in our careers, but have you always been lucky, or what else has contributed to your success?
Look, I do say that. I think part of the formula is hard work, a good attitude, a willingness to learn, and I think there's a little bit of luck that comes along the way. So, roles have come up and I've been in the organisation at the right time to put all those ingredients together of hard work, willingness to learn, and a really positive attitude to make a difference.
So I want to ask you the final question I ask everybody, which is, from your perspective, Lisa, what does brave feminine leadership mean, and do you think it needs to change?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. One is brave is about saying yes. And, I wish I'd said yes to opportunities a little bit earlier in my career, or so I think yes is important as part of that. I think probably one thing I would say is the more you say yes, the easier it gets. I think also being brave, and if you want to be brave and say yes or put things forward, I do think it's to be, informed. And I'm big on learning, as you can probably tell.
Yeah. And
so keeping that learning going, I think, is really important. And then equally, I think leadership is having a point of view is really important. And sometimes having a point of view means being brave, have an informed point of view, and saying yes to putting that point of view out there.
Fantastic. Amazing, Lisa. Thank you so much for joining our conversation and for sharing all of your experiences. I've just loved having the chance to have a conversation with you.
Oh, me too. Thank you.